tricky question. The Romans formed a republic, or government of the people. Our motto became SPQR, which stands for Senatus Populusque Romanus, the Senate and people of Rome. The Senate was an assembly of older men from rich landowning families. They were called the patricians, and they had a lot of money and status in Rome. The people were basically everyone else, the regular folks who didn't come from a noble or patrician family. They were called the plebeians. The Senate and the people knew they needed leadership to keep their country organized, but a king was not welcome. So we Romans decided to have two patricians, called consuls, share the job of leading our country. The consuls served for just 1 year in order to limit their power even more. What a creative solution! But teacher says the plebeians had one big problem with this arrangement. If the consuls were all patricians, and they made all the laws, then who was looking out for the rest of us? So the plebeians said, wait a minute here. We're the people growing all your food, and we're the people fighting in your army. We need some rights too. But the patricians were not really interested in sharing their power. This conflict between the patricians and the plebeians was called the Struggle of the Orders. The plebeians finally got so frustrated that they just left Rome and set up their own camp outside the city. It didn't take long for the patricians to realize that life was much better with the plebeians around. So they struck a deal to give plebeians the right to elect their own representatives in Rome's government. But that's not all the plebeians demanded. Teacher says our 12 tables of law are one of the greatest Roman accomplishments. This afternoon, we learned how they came about. Way back in the early days, the patricians were in charge of the laws. They weren't written down, and a lot of things were decided in secret. Not only that, but many legal decisions seemed very unfair to the plebeians. So they insisted that the patricians and the plebeians decide the laws together and write them down publicly for everyone to see. Then the patricians just couldn't change the laws whenever they felt like it, and the criminals couldn't claim they didn't know they were breaking the law. Grandfather says the 12 tables made things clear for everybody. Grandfather is always telling me that good government and clear laws are the foundation of Rome's greatness because they bring out the best in our exceptional people. Cincinnatus is one of his favorite heroes. Way back in the early days of our republic, almost 600 years ago, Cincinnatus served a year as consul of Rome. When his term was up, he went to live on his little farm outside the city. A few years later, Rome was in trouble. Enemies were approaching from the east and southeast. There wasn't enough time for two consuls to discuss things with the Senate. We needed one strong leader, or a dictator. Someone said, hey, what about Cincinnatus? He would be perfect for this job. Let's make him our dictator. The officials rushed to the country and found Cincinnatus working in his field. We need your help, they cried. We want to make you dictator for 6 months to lead us against the threat from the east. Cincinnatus was happy to come back to Rome, where he quickly organized us to defeat the enemy in just 16 days. Then, he returned leadership power to the consuls and returned to his beloved farm. What a guy. Cincinnatus could have been dictator for 5.5 more months. A lot of people would have used that opportunity to take power and money for themselves. Grandfather says if Rome had more people like Cincinnatus, we would never have any problems at all. Over the centuries, Rome grew and prospered. We had such a well-organized military that we won most of our battles with neighboring tribes. Most of the time, we treated our former enemies well. Their people were allowed to become Roman citizens. We built roads and cities for them and protected their farms and businesses. One thing bothers me, though. Not all the conquered people became Roman citizens. some became slaves. Grandfather says that today nearly 1/3 of the people in Rome are slaves. Families like mine use household slaves to take care of children, cook, clean, and run our businesses. Marcus tells me that even Teacher is a slave from Greece. He's been saving up to buy his freedom, and then he can become a Roman citizen. But some slaves do really hard work in our workshops and farms. I asked Teacher why Rome has so many slaves. We have enough money to pay everyone. Teacher told me to stop asking so many questions, or I'd end up like Tiberius Gracchus. Tiberius Gracchus was a patrician who lived about 250 years ago. During that period, patricians were taking a lot of land from Roman soldiers, or legionnaires as we call them. Here's how it happened. In the early days of Rome, our wars were close to home, so men could leave their farms, fight, and get back in time to take care of the harvest. But in Tiberius Gracchus's time, the wars took longer and were farther away. Our men were gone for years. The wives and children couldn't take care of the land themselves, so many small farms were taken over by patricians. The men returned to find their families without a home. And they couldn't even get a job on the patricians' large estates because slaves were doing all the farm work. Tiberius Gracchus thought this was really unfair. He worked hard to get a law passed that would give land back to men who fought for Rome. This made a lot of wealthy Romans angry because they weren't interested in sharing the land. Grandfather tells me that one day some of them hit Tiberius on the head with a chair and threw his body in the river. I bet that isn't allowed in the 12 Tables of Law. Teacher says that killing Tiberius Gracchus didn't solve anything. For the next 80 years, the senators fought with each other about who should be in charge, until one man ended up changing everything. Father says that Julius Caesar represents the best and the worst of Rome. And personally, I think he has a very cool first name. Caesar lived about 80 years after Tiberius Gracchus. While the senators were arguing in Rome, Caesar was off winning wars. He was a brilliant military ruler, loyal and fair to his troops, and brutal to the enemy. In just a few years, he fought and conquered the Gauls to the north. He was also a great writer and speaker, but he used his skills to brag a lot about his accomplishments. One of his most famous letters was about a battle he led. Veni Vidi Vici, he wrote, "I came, I saw, I conquered." Back in Rome, the people celebrated his victories, and the senators worried about his popularity. Plebeians loved Caesar because he was very generous. He gave free grain to people and donated some of his own property for public parks. Caesar had a lot of strong ideas about how to make Rome better. But he was a bossy person who liked to have his own way. He even got the Senate to name him dictator for life. But after a while, many senators felt that he was acting too much like a king. They wanted Rome to remain a republic, a government of the people. But some senators wanted Caesar's power for themselves. Father tells me that finally, while Caesar was presiding over the Senate, a group of men attacked him with daggers. Rome would never be the same again. I wonder what Aeneas would think about Julius Caesar and all that has happened since the beginning of Rome. Our country is larger and richer than anything the world has ever seen. We created a new kind of government and legal system that tries to be fair to Roman citizens, no matter where they came from or how they started out. Our military is well organized and powerful. And I haven't even begun to write about the amazing accomplishments of our engineers and builders. I imagine that Aeneas would be surprised at what he started. I can't wait to get back to school tomorrow to learn even more about my country. This dream of being emperor seems much more complicated than I realized.